So this is a video that was recommended to me by one of my subscribers. So thank you for that. You know how you are. And the moment I went over and started watching it, I was drawn in by their accents. There are some British accents that I just think are utterly brilliant. But I did really enjoy watching their video. So I thought this would be one that I would really like to share with people. And, you know, do a reaction to. Now, before I jump into this video, I am only going to do the first half of this video because, for starters, the video itself is only a few days old. But also, if you have a look at my screen here, they're a quite new channel. They've only done 101 videos and they've only got 985 subscribers. So what I'm going to say here, now I always put links for the videos that I do. So in the description for my video here, you'll be able to find the link to the original video. And of course, you'll also see in the description for the video, like in the title, you'll be able to see the link to their channel. So it would be really cool if we can get them over that 1,000 subscriber mark. They only need 15 more subscribers to bump them up over 1,000 subs. So that would be cool if we could do that for them. If you like their content, obviously. So let's jump in and find out what observations these guys have of Australia after only being in Australia for 26 days.
So before we get into today's vlog, we thought we'd do something a bit different. We'd kind of run through basically what we've noticed as differences and kind of obscurities, I would say, kind of culture shocks in Australia in comparison to the UK. So today marks our 26th day? 26th day of being in Australia. So we thought we'd just run through a few things for you Aussies to kind of have a laugh and kind of maybe not realise, oh, that's a thing. And also for our British audience watching as well. If you've not come over and you're thinking about coming over, you can kind of get a see and go, oh, right, I've been told about this beforehand. So without any further ado, let's get into our point.
Okay, I've just got to say it. As the daughter of a movie critic, and especially a movie critic who was a huge fan of Errol Flynn, there's definitely a similarity there.
Point number one
Yeah.
is the sheer size of the country.
Yeah.
This is the first thing that we noticed. And when I say first thing, I mean literally as we were flying over the country, we got over Aussie soil and the pilot said, now we're right over Australia now. And we were like, oh yes, brilliant, we're going to be there not too long off. 4 hours later we'd had a sleep and we hadn't landed.
No.
So it just shows the sheer size. Obviously you Aussies know this more than anybody, but for anyone else that's watching that's not from Australia,
Especially,
might not know that.
Especially,
You know, that's a really good point. And I know we've heard from people in the US who talk about long flights across the United States. And you hear about people who've come here and they talk about the distance from Australia back to their country. But I never really think about if you wanted to fly from Sydney to Perth, for example. That is a decent flight. But for us, we just kind of take those kind of flights for granted. I mean, for me, growing up in Tassie, Melbourne was a good flight because that was only an hour. So that was a nice short flight. But if you were to fly to like Sydney or Queensland, then you did expect to be up in the air for 3 or 4 hours. And it was no big deal.
in like Europe as well. And then
Where
also
could you go? Sorry, just to interrupt you. In 4 hours from the UK, you can get to Greece, Turkey, that
in a
kind
plane. In
Yeah,
a plane, yeah,
Greece,
definitely.
Turkey.
Yeah, because like you said, like Amsterdam, so like Netherlands would take like half an hour, 40
yeah,
minutes.
really short.
France you could get to in around about 50 minutes.
Mhm.
So the actual accessibility in 4 hours probably, yeah, could take you into like South Spain, even into, you could probably even get into maybe Morocco in
Yeah,
4 hours. So
definitely.
you could get into
Yeah,
North Africa from England in 4 hours.
It's mental.
So
It's
it
crazy.
does show like the size of the place.
Yeah.
But that's also for Brits as well. So when we were coming over as well, we know somebody quite close down in Sydney. So when we were speaking to family and stuff, they turned around to us and they were like, "Oh, you could even go down and nip in for a cup of tea or a coffee."
You could just
For them
nip
in
down the road
Sydney.
and go, yeah,
Now,
it's so
with
fun.
us being in the sunny coast, people not fully understanding the scale and the size of, you Aussies will know, going down from the sunny coast all the way to Sydney is quite an ordeal, but people
10,
still do it, don't
10,
get me wrong.
14 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah, we met
people
somebody the other
do
day
it.
that did do it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like, one of our friends' boyfriends literally drove like 14 hours just 2 days ago.
Which
I love when I hear comments like, someone's like, "Oh, you could just pop into Sydney for a cup of tea with your friend," and they haven't really figured out the distance. And I guess part of that is that there's no comparison because Australia is an island. You don't see it alongside other islands other than New Zealand, but New Zealand's itty bitty, and people from like the UK probably don't even notice that. So it is a little bit amusing when people think, yeah, you can just pop down to Sydney from the Gold Coast for a cuppa, do that in one day, when it is actually quite a distance. And it's all subjective too. I mean, here in Australia, for us, for me, a trip down to Melbourne and back in a day, that's a 2.5 drive to get down there, 2.5 drive to get back up. But you do it in a day and you don't think anything of it.
is crazy when you think, if you go from the most northern tip of England, say in England, not Scotland, but yeah, if you go from the northern tip of England to the southern tip of England, you're talking maybe 4 or 5 hours, 5 hours driving,
Yeah.
maybe 6,
Yeah.
depending on traffic. But like, if you were just to drive straight, no traffic, you could probably do it in 5 hours.
Geez, I wouldn't even get as far as Canberra in 5 hours.
But obviously, traffic included, probably 6, 7 hours. So yeah, that's just the actual sheer size and scale of the country is mental. So we actually came here last year and we actually travelled up the whole east coast. We're starting at Avalon in Sydney and moving all the way up to Cairns to finish. So we've literally done that whole east coast. And
Okay, I get what he's saying. As in, it's still the east coast, but it's not the whole east coast. If you're going to do the whole east coast, then you really need to start from like Lakes Entrance or something down in Victoria, and then go all the way up the coast. So starting up in New South Wales is, and I'm not sure whether Avalon is north or south of Sydney. I'm sure I went through it, but I don't remember whether it was north or south of Sydney, so I couldn't tell you that. But certainly you've done half the east coast if you've done from Avalon and then headed north and come back. I've just got to say, how cute is that little dog?
variety in that space and just those places alone is insane. We've not done any of the west coast, not done the centre, not done the southern parts, Northern Territories
We
too
said
much.
we'd love to do like Melbourne, wouldn't we? That'd be
Yeah.
quite cool. But
But
there's so many spots.
I want to
And
ask
Perth.
as well, what are the places to go and see as well? So what are these places outside of maybe Queensland or the East Coast that we've maybe not thought of going to yet that you guys would recommend? So let us know in the comments if you have been to any of these spots or you're from any of these spots. Where's the best place for food? Where's the best place for music? Where's the best place for, just scenery? I want to know all these things. So if you can get comments in that, we can add it to the list as things to go and do when we get a chance.
I'd actually be really curious to know what places you guys would recommend. I know for me, probably one of my favourite places when I did my East Coast road trip was Port Macquarie. And of course, Lakes Entrance as well. I loved that too. It was a bit cooler at Lakes Entrance because I was doing a winter road trip and I was trying to get north to the warm weather. But it was still really lovely there. I did them in the off season though, so I missed out on the really touristy time. So I don't know what they're like in the tourist season. They might be a little bit less bearable if they're overly crowded. But I would love to hear what you guys think are the places to visit in Australia.
We love nature, don't we? So anything
Yeah.
like nature related would be like a biggie for us.
Be a
so,
big deal.
yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
that's number one.
Okay, on one hand, I think if you like nature, then there are just so many places in Australia to go. But I would definitely highly recommend going to Tasmania if you're a nature lover, because, it is kind of full of nature. But also, you've got so many other national parks in pretty much every state of Australia. Just depends on what sort of nature you really want to enjoy.
So point two is definitely like how lush this place is and green. So I think when we came to Australia, we definitely expected it to be so like just like red soil and like
Yeah.
I said, roos bouncing around everywhere, which roos are bouncing around everywhere. But it's definitely not as like dry and as we thought it was.
No.
That's really interesting that she's saying roos are bouncing around everywhere after them saying they're on the Gold Coast. Presumably they must be in a more regional area, so they must be sort of more outside of the whole touristy, Gold Coasty, beachy area. So I'm curious, I'd love to hear from any Queenslanders that are watching this video. What areas would you expect to see largish population of roos? Because that's the impression that they're giving here, that they live in an area where there is a fairly large roo population.
Definitely not. Like you said, we'd seen a few things like I'm a Celebrity is a massive show in the UK. You can see how green it is there, but you don't really get the full perspective when you get to a country and you see it yourself. So I'm really excited for family and friends to come over
Oh,
and
so
just experience
excited.
how green it actually is, because I do think in our heads we do have like the open back, outback kind of idea in our heads. When you get here, you're like,
Whoa.
oh my gosh, it's actually a lot more green than I thought.
I'm trying to figure out if he's talking about like tropical rainforest areas in terms of it's greener than I thought, or if they haven't figured out that come summer all those green lawns, etc., are going to be brown, because it is so very different in summertime. So them seeing the place in winter, yeah, they may have a different opinion in another 3 months or so.
Yeah.
Not only that, on that point as well, another kind of sub point of this is just the actual biodiversity. Like, if you go out in the water, I know there's a high risk, but the actual idea that there's tons of different jellyfish, there's just turtles,
Turtles and-
dolphins,
Yeah.
sharks, whales, humpback whales, and stuff. And then inland, you've got stuff like monitor lizards, then you've got roos, koalas, like possums, like
So cool.
sugar gliders, greater glider, like just the actual. And also, Aussies know about this stuff in the UK.
Nobody
So
would
many
know.
people in the UK don't like kind of maybe not
Connect.
care, but yeah, they don't connect
Connect
to
with
the
it.
nature and stuff that they have on the doorstep enough. I don't think so. The idea that when you get chatting to an Aussie, it seems like every Aussie is like basically an encyclopedia on all the nature and stuff. It's really good to kind of
So
have those
good.
conversations. So I love that about the place.
He is right, isn't he? We do have an appreciation for Australia's biodiversity. We love our native animals, we love our birds, we love most of our marine life, and we still appreciate our crocs and sharks and stuff like that. We just, don't exactly love them. And I guess you could say that for the most part, many of us do know so much about Australian wildlife, Australian birds, etc. But I think probably a lot of that comes from our climate, because we do have the chance to spend more time outside. I mean, yeah, in Tassie you probably only get to spend so many days out of that 3 months of summer outdoors. Um, but, the further north you go, the more time you have through the year when you can go outside and enjoy nature. And we do seem to have a good work life balance here in Australia. So I guess all those things contribute to us having that encyclopedic knowledge, as he says, of Australian biodiversity.
Number 3 is the lingo. So it's been really quite funny to mix and mingle with people and hear some of the crazy kind of differences in the lingo. So like we say something like, sometimes you're saying to people that go past, "Oh, it's all right, bud," instead of "mate."
Yeah,
and, like,
bud,
and you can
bud.
tell they have no idea what you've said, or maybe they do.
I need to
but
get
they
out of
don't.
that habit. I think
Yeah.
I think they understand what I mean, because I think Americans say it as well, but it's always been in like kind of especially my family. Like my granddad used to say it like, "You're right, bud." Like he's literally, my granddad's nickname was Grandad Bud.
Okay, here's something that I disagree on. I don't think he should be trying to get out of the habit of saying things his way. Yeah, you might over time pick up a lot of Australian colloquialisms and not realise that you do. I've seen quite a few videos of people who've been in Australia for quite some time, and they use like yeah, nah, or nah, yeah, without even thinking about it. But when it's cool stuff like "you're right, bud," with with the cool accent, of course, then don't lose that. You know, that's something that's part of who you are as a person. You know, I worked with someone from the UK for several years, and I used to love some of the colloquialisms that she used. And what you find is that if you're using things like that is part of your language, people around you start to adopt that as well. So, yeah, I hope he doesn't intentionally try to start picking up Australian colloquialisms and throw away his own colloquialisms that he's brought with him. Because I think, you know, that is one of the enjoyable things about getting to know someone who's moved to Australia from another country is just learning all those little quirks with the language, and it can be quite a lot of fun. And I think what he's experiencing at this point in time is probably more about he still has a very strong accent. So people are probably just pausing, and in their head they're just catching up with the accent. So it's taking them a little bit longer to figure out what he's said. And it's not that they're not understanding, it's just that they need a bit more time to, I guess, translate. And I know that's not the right way of describing it, but they just need a bit more time to grapple with what he said based on his accent.
So, because he always used to say Bud, I think I just nicknamed him Grandad Bud. So I think, because I kind of got that in my head, I do need to kind of understand that it's mate. Like, "You okay, mate? How are you going, mate?" Like, or just, "How's it going?"
How's it going?
How's it going? As an introduction to somebody is a nice little introduction that I think I could pick up in time. But it's only been 26 days. But like you said, the kind of lingo is a funny one, because there's a lot of crossover between like what I would class as like American and Australian kind of lingo that would a Brit would struggle with if they went to America, which is the stuff like capsicum, stuff. Yeah, we would say bell pepper, zucchini, which is courgette. Aubergine for us is your eggplant. So there's kind of stuff like on a food side of things that Americans would say, but specifically to the Oz kind of stuff, which is like your lingo, like "how's it going? How's it going?"
How's it going? And then when you like say, "Oh, so sorry," or you say something, they'll say, "Oh, you're alright."
Yeah, you're alright.
You're alright.
That's kind of nice.
That's nice.
But like I said, there's the stuff like dunny. There's loads that like struth, through conversation.
Yeah,
some guys go struth.
I love how when they mention the Australian words or the terms that they're not familiar with, they actually say them pretty much with an Australian accent, because obviously they're listening really hard to what's being said and they're internalising it as, you know, taking on new language. So they're, you know, these guys are going to be speaking with an Australian accent really soon, the way they're going.
Truth as you're talking.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah, I was going to say, when we had a mate last year, didn't we? And when he was speaking to us, he was saying it as he was saying it, and we were close enough that I turned around and I was like, "Are you saying truth? Like truth as in like,
True.
are you truth? Like truth? And he was like, "No, I'm saying struth." And I was like, what does that mean? And he went, just kind of like agreeing with you, like, yeah. So we would go, yeah, it's true. Not everybody does that in Oz, but some people do. So, like I said, the lingo is one that it's not a barrier, but it's so funny when you kind of come to a position where you kind of, especially with my northern accent as well, I'm basically a wildling from Game of Thrones, my accent. So, you know, when we kind of come face to face and kind of have a mix up, like, my name is Joe, how I would say it, but you would say Joe in Australia. So
when people call you Joel.
Joel, like Joel.
I have to admit, had he not clarified it just then, I would have thought he said Joel with an L, not Joe. Just goes to show you how easy it is to get confused when it comes to the accent, and how pronunciation can be tricky sometimes.
Instead of Joe. So I go, oh, my name's Joel. And they go, oh, Joel. How are you, Joel? I go, yeah, I'll be Joel now. Yeah, I'm Joel. I'm Joel in Australia.
I can sympathise with him, but I'm going to make a suggestion here. If you are someone coming to Australia from overseas and you do have a short name like Joe, if it is shortened, then maybe introduce yourself. Like if his name was actually Joseph, but he's always been called Joe, then, you know, Aussies are going to shorten your name anyway. So you could just introduce yourself as, yeah, hi, I'm Joseph, but you can just call me Joe. Because then even with the accent where it sounds like Joel, people might at least stop and go, oh, Joe or Joel. So, just a thought. But yeah, I can imagine you would hit a point where you would just go, I'm just going to answer to Joel from now on, because these Aussies just don't get it.
But yeah, other things about the accent as well, it's kind of my accent more than the Aussies that I've noticed is, on a video the other day I said the word fairy bread, but in my accent, when I'm not trying to say it that way, I say furry bread. Like, so that's how my northern accent would come across. I go, furry bread. So,
like you've left the bread in the cupboard for too long.
Yeah, and a bit of mould had got on it and it become furry bread. So yeah, little bits of lingo like that. It's always funny. Like I said, it's never really been an issue. It's just kind of coming in those positions where you kind of realise the differences, tend to get a chuckle out of people. So it's been a nice experience, kind of experiencing that kind of mix up.
I love hearing those kind of differences in accents. To me, it's endearing in some ways. Depends on the accent, of course. But yeah, you know, furry bread. I love that. I'll have some furry bread, thanks. Yeah, but you know, that just, you know, adds to the joy of meeting new people from other countries, is just, you know, getting a feel for their accents, and sometimes the way they pronounce things is actually pretty cool.
Especially with my kind of dialect not being, like, is it PR English? I think it's RP English, I think it is, what the Queen's English. So, hello, how are you? That kind of thing is like not how we speak, and majority of Brits, I would guess, that are on TV tend to speak with the posh, well-spoken southern accent. So as a northerner, bit of confusion, but we're doing all right. But been a really, really fun experience. But all that being said, those are our 3 points. We want to know if you've ever been to another country, maybe UK, maybe any other country, if you are an Aussie, that is, what has been one of the biggest culture shocks for you going into that country? I love hearing these stories of like, oh, I went to such and such a thing and I did this and they had no idea, or I accidentally ended up going to this place when I was trying to ask for this.
Or if you've been to the UK, we want to hear your points from the UK. We know from speaking to a lot of people that you think the coffee is bad. I can agree, after being here only 26 days, the coffee is terrible and it's full of sugar. But yeah, other than that, the weather, because we know they're bad.
Yes, the weather.
Anything else that not necessarily bad, but just things that are different.
What are your things that you noticed? What was kind of for you when you went to these countries? Because we love reading all the comments, we read them all, so we'd love to hear what you say. But anyway, we've got a walk to get on with. So without any further ado, get up.
Where's your lead?
Let's go.
Let's get you.
So like I said, I've only played the first half of their video, And the second half of the video is just as enjoyable. They're actually talking about stuff while they're out on a walk, talking about the dreaded magpie, which is quite amusing. I really enjoyed this video. So thank you to the person who recommended it. Totally spot on. If you did like what they were saying, if you did like these guys, hop across, watch the rest of their video. Leave comments. They asked a bunch of questions there at the end about cultural shocks that you've experienced travelling overseas, if you've travelled overseas. Feel free to comment about those down here as well. But you could, if you want to support them, hop across and, leave comments on their video as well. And like I said, they're only 15 subs off having 1,000 subscribers. So I'm going to go check later on and see if maybe people have jumped over and subscribed. But it would be super cool to see their subs jump over 1,000. So let me know what you thought about these guys and what you thought about this video. Do you think that they are going to enjoy their time in Australia? They haven't said if they're here on a working holiday or if they've moved here permanently. I'd have to watch some more of their videos to figure that out. But I'd love to know what you thought about this video. So please, if you're new, hit the subscribe button. If you liked the video, hit like, of course, and leave a comment below.